Lead the Team Nation. Welcome back to another great episode. I've got a treat for you today with Phillip Brenckle, who is the CFO over at West Shore Home, where he joined back in 2020, actually 1 week before the COVID shutdown. And during his tenure, though, they've seen over a 1,000% plus revenue growth, with the majority of that coming organically. He started his career in IT and business systems before transitioning to a 15-year career in corporate and institutional banking with PNC Financial Services Group and Huntington Bankshares. He received his undergraduate degree from Duquesne University and his MBA from University of Pittsburgh. And West Shore Home, in case you might be familiar with the name, but not necessarily familiar with what their business has been up to, they started as a local window and door replacement company in a small Pennsylvania suburb, and they've grown this into a technology-enabled home improvement powerhouse with over 2,500 employees across 13 different states. With continued national expansion plans, they've committed to staying true to their roots with a customer-first mindset and an employee-centric culture. And just to show you the proof behind that effort, they've received over 20,000 five-star reviews on Google and Facebook. Unbelievable here. And they were recently recognized as a top workplace USA. Phillip, welcome to Lead the Team.
Ben, thanks for having me. Looking forward to sharing a little bit about our story today, and hopefully sharing some of my stories to help other leaders out there, or help those aspiring to be leaders, to share some of my insights on what I've learned over my career.
You totally get it. Let's do this here. So let's start with, tell me a little bit about some of the key attributes of becoming a true leader.
Yeah, no, great question. And obviously a great place to start, right? So I think the first part about being a leader is it's certainly not a title that you give yourself, right? It is a title that is earned by not only, the management team that you're selected to be the leader with, but also by your people, that your people view you as a leader. There's a big difference between a manager and a leader, right? And a leader is somebody that people look to for advice, that people respect, not in the sense that, like, you have to respect me because of the position. You respect me because I'm a good person, and I know how to get things done, and I know how to be successful, and I can show you how to be better at your job. So those are all, kind of key attributes. And I subscribe to the servant leader aspect. Everyone has their own different leadership styles, but I really want to do what I can to enable my people, and sort of lift them up and, see them grow. And that's really important to me. In terms of my leadership style. I think, leading through things like fear or attributes like that, where you sort of like demand respect. To me, that's the opposite of what a leader is. That's somebody that more falls into that manager class, right? Where they're more thinking about it as, well, I'm the boss, right? And in some ways, the leadership title is like rent. You have to pay into it all the time. And to make sure that, you maintain it, and you pay into that by being with your people, by supporting your people, by listening to your people, by coaching your people, by holding your people accountable too. I mean, it's not all gumdrops and lollipops. People need to be held accountable. There's ways to have those conversations, though, that, that help you in that process, where, you're doing what's right for the employee. Right. And I know accountability is a big part of, I think, why we've been successful at West Shore Home, because we built a culture of respectful accountability, which is a very important. I underline the word respectful.
Yeah, I liked a lot about what you're talking about there. I think it's so powerful for leaders to think about it, something that you ultimately earn, because sometimes people can be bestowed with titles, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the leader, even if they have the title. When did you recognize in yourself, maybe thinking about like early in your career, or even earlier than that, about this idea about sort of earning the leadership title? And when's a moment maybe where you had to make a deposit, or I guess pay your dues?
Yeah.
You're ready for that.
So, a lot of these questions are unscripted, and that is definitely this question. So, but it's a perfect question, right? Because it's so vivid in my mind. As a child, or as I was in high school, I never thought of myself as a leader in any way, shape, or form. Right? I was very shy. I just wasn't the kind of person that ever viewed myself as a leader. And I went to college. And during my college career, I joined a fraternity. And that was sort of a defining moment in me, where I saw some attributes in myself where I thought I could be a leader, where people would follow me or they would get behind the ideas that I had. And I would say, like, that was the starting point of my leadership career. And it just continued to snowball from there over time. Whether, it was doing things after college. But then I went to work in the banking industry, where you get the opportunity to be a manager after quite some time. You have to kind of earn your stripes in the trenches, if you will, until you've been given the chance to be a leader. So what I did to hone those skills is I did a lot of community things where, I could be a leader of, organizations. I was very involved with my local Rotary Club. I was the president of the club. I was served on multiple committees. I was on several boards of directors for nonprofits, and continued to kind of hone my leadership skills that way until the banking industry gave me my first opportunity, to be a manager, which is my, kind of first intro to being a manager / leader. And then, obviously, because of all that hard work and the deposits, I love that analogy as a former banker, all the deposits I made, I came out swinging, and I was able to grow, very, very rapidly in my career and get lots of promotions. And, people recognized the leadership value that I brought to the organization. And I was able to grow really quickly until I got to meet a guy by the name of BJ Worzen, who also saw leadership capabilities in me that perhaps actually no one else had seen before. And asked me to be part of the C-suite of his company. And, that will certainly go down as one of the best decisions I personally made. And I'm very appreciative of the fact that he saw that in me and gave me the opportunity to continue to take those leadership qualities that I developed and take them at a larger scale, right? That's what we as leaders always hope for, is to be able to do more with our leadership skills and to be able to do them at a larger scale where we can impact more people and have a larger impact on the organization.
Yeah. So good. So fraternity wise, I guess your fraternity saw leadership possibilities within you. And they said, look, Phillip, take this stuff over, like take our fraternity over, or what was that early conversation like? And were you shocked, or how did it go?
Yeah. It was sort of a little bit of an aha moment where, some of the guys that I thought of as leaders in the organization, right? Because even when I was newly introduced to the fraternity, I didn't think of myself as a leader. I was a follower. I was just kind of going along with what everybody said. And some of the older guys, or actually a guy that was, my year, who I identified as a leader because I listened to what he said. Some of those guys approached me and basically said, hey, we think you should think about taking on a leadership role in this fraternity because, we see qualities in you that we think will go a long way. And it was a number of years ago. I am starting to get a little bit older. So I might have had like a vice president sort of title first. And then I believe it was my junior year, that went really well. And everyone said, like, you need to be president, right? And that was kind of the first time that anyone had ever recommended me to be the president of anything or be in charge of anything.
Wow. And so when that happens, I assume you don't feel ready, because if you did already feel ready, you would have been throwing your own hat in the ring. What's your advice for leaders? And, later when someone saw in you and say, this guy can lead an organization in the C-suite, what's your advice for leaders who don't feel ready when an opportunity pops up?
So definitely, the first is just roll up your sleeves, right? I mean, that to me has solved 95% of the complex problems in my life. I just rolled up my sleeves and I relied on, my training isn't the right word, but I'm blessed to grow up in a good family with a father who was a leader, who helped guide me in that process. And I know was probably hoping for that time when I would actually want to be a leader. So, I drew upon the values that I learned as a child and what I saw from my parents. And I just rolled up my sleeves. And the best way when you get in that new leadership role, that hard work can overcome so many other shortcomings. Numerous times in my banking career, I would meet with the executive of the corporate bank or whatever, and I would say, look, I'm young here relative to the peers in this industry, and I probably don't know anything, but what I promise you I will do is I will outwork everyone, and that will make up for the shortcomings that I'm missing in terms of knowledge or experience or anything like that.
And so how's it?
1000%. It is the sole reason I sit here today is hard work.
Hard work. Okay.
Unequivocal.
So translate hard work for the listeners, because some might be saying, you know what, you can keep your C-suite position. If it's all about the hard work, doesn't sound like much fun. Sounds like hard work sounds like a road to burnout and missing your kids' birthdays and only going to Disney World once versus 30 times. How do you respond to that?
Good question. So first and foremost, right, you have to control that, meaning hard work. Like if you use sports analogies are always good ones, right? There's guys that I'm sure put in 1 million hours in the gym, and there's guys that put in half of that. And yet, some of those guys probably excel the guys that put in 1 million hours. And so, as a result of that, you have to figure out what's right for you and your personal life and your personal style. But when you're there and when you're present, you got to be giving it your all, and you got to be focused, and you have to really care, and you have to have passion. And I know is particularly when you're starting out in the beginning of your career, it's not easy because your job might not be something that you're super passionate about, right? Like your first job out of college or your second job, like it might not be what, you thought you would be doing, but you have to recognize that's a means to maybe get to where you want to go in your head, and to go on that journey. And so you have to take, my dad gave me some sage advice that, he said, when you get into your first job or when you get in your first leadership role, if they say sweep the floor, you pick up the broom and you sweep that floor as good as you possibly can. And you don't look down on the fact that you're being asked to sweep the floor, because that's not in your job description, right? Your job description is nothing. You're there to be whatever the company thinks you need to be. And if you have that attitude, you'll excel because people will realize that you're a team player and you want to be part of the big picture.
Phillip, I'm glad you said that. It took me back to my first job working for a textile manufacturing company. And they had me doing things like on the plant floor, doing time studies overnight, doing measuring trailers in Alabama in the August heat. I mean, just doing the most brutal. I'm like, I'm a college graduate and I'm pretty awesome. Why should I be doing this? And I got some similar advice from pretty much everyone around me was like, dude, all you really have right now is your enthusiasm. You have no work experience. Get in there and do it. And also, I'm glad we talked about her work there, and you made a distinction that I think it's important for the listeners to take note of. You didn't say hours. You were talking about being present at work. It reminds me of Cal Newport's formula for work accomplished is time plus intensity. And so I think it's important for people to recognize that hard work can mean maybe you're not working crazy long hours, but the hours you're working, you're making them so productive and you're so focused. You're not on social media or your text chain with your buddies. You're just like focusing on the work at hand. And hard work can translate that way.
Yes, absolutely. And I think hard work is also not it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to become the C-suite in a company, right? There are hardworking people that are frontline employees that love being frontline working employees, and that's awesome. And you can still get, you don't have to be a manager to be a leader. I see that a lot within our own company, where I hear really good stories about guys that aren't leaders, or I'm sorry, not managers, but they're leaders, and that they inspire other people to bring their standards up to the standards of what the company is asking for, because they believe in that mission, vision, and values. And that's something that I know if our founder was here, he would say that would be one of the things that he was that he's most proud of, is how many people around here want to be leaders, in the sense of, regardless of if you manage employees or not, to be a leader of men and women, to help somebody who maybe isn't as enthusiastic, or maybe has lost their way, or whatever it is, and kind of build them up and bring them along the journey. And as I said, the definition of success isn't landing in the C-suite or becoming a director or becoming a VP. Everybody takes different paths in life. But being a leader is something that I think a lot of people want to aspire. And obviously that's the purpose of the podcast today. But I wanted to make that distinction, that like getting to the C-suite doesn't mean that Phil Brenckle is a great leader. I hope that I have attributes of a great leader, but I also am still learning. And not getting to the C-suite doesn't define your success. Just like, as I said, like the number of hours that you work doesn't necessarily define your success. Although I will put one plug in. You got to work a little extra harder than everyone, right? If you want 9 to 5, it's going to be really hard to get ahead in this world.
Yeah, that's not a great CEO. Yeah, C-suite leaders are not lifestyle decisions for most people. Or maybe it is a lifestyle decision, but not the kind people are thinking about.
That's correct.
A lot of responsibility. Yeah, I think about it like when you're talking, like, man, titles do often relate to responsibility and what you're thinking about at night and the level of impact you're making. But leadership, not necessarily. And I like that. And I think great advice for leaders is think about leading where you are. And oftentimes the title will come versus, hey, I want to get that title. And then once I'm get that title, I'm going to lead the organization. Well, start leading now. I mean, what a great training ground. Now your background is pretty interesting there, Phillip, because here you are, working for West Shore Home as an executive, but you mentioned you had this banking background. And I know you've got a lot of background in M&A. So for leaders listening today who aren't really familiar with how M&A works, how would you describe it to them in a nutshell? And what was being a leader in that industry like versus what you're doing now?
Yeah. So, my experience is pretty broad in M&A, both in structuring, financing it, working with founders, working for a founder. I've kind of been able to see M&A, know a lot of investment bankers, interacted with a lot of investment bankers, a lot of M&A legal counsel. So I've seen it from all angles. And it's really, it's an area that obviously I enjoy. And, with the state of the markets being a little bit in flux, there's a lot going on right now, both good and bad, right? The landscape in the industry is really changing. For M&A, we've come off a lot of hot years of M&A when things have really been growing rapidly. And now that the playing field is a little more discerning. And so, in terms of the M&A business and leadership around it, it is very much an experience-driven business. The way you get good at M&A is doing lots of deals, so you can understand the difference between a good deal and a bad deal, because they do definitely exist.
So as an executive, to be in the M&A world, you got to be thinking about, you got to understand your own business. You got to understand the funding sources, which are banks, but then you're surveying the landscape, right? For opportunities, for fits, for acquiring companies. I mean, it's sort of like, it's like financial Legos on steroids or something along those lines, right? You've got to understand the landscape and the business and the financing all at the same time and make it come together.
Exactly. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was obviously something that I was able to bring to West Shore, having a lot of experience seeing it from all those angles.
Yeah. Because you're on the
It,
financing side, right? On the banking side.
exactly.
So you were
Exactly.
funding a lot of these M&A deals. And then you said, you know what? That looks like fun. I'm going to go to a company where maybe they want to bring me in and I'm going to be on the other side of the desk. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was part of, part of why I was brought in here. M&A is part of our strategy, but it's truly speaking, the revenues that we've acquired. Now we've grown those businesses a lot, but the
Yeah.
revenues that
Over
we've
1,000%.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm like, M&A, like you're doing it, but come on, your organic growth is, I mean, you're killing it. So what's the secret? And how are you thinking about M&A in an environment where how much M&A do you really need when you're growing like that?
Yeah. So part of when I say we've grown organically is the ability to acquire a business and then grow on top of what we bought in that base
So
business.
seeing the potential.
Exactly.
Okay.
Seeing the potential as well as just general organic growth within our business. And it sort of falls into maybe 20% or 15%, might even be a little bit less, was the base businesses that we bought. Then, 30% of that is the growth of those base businesses. And then the remaining is just the natural growth of West Shore through our greenfield
Gotcha. Okay.
and the growth of business. So it's kind of fallen into a couple of different buckets. And so you're exactly right. Having a having a strategy there is really important, right? I think if you talk to lawyers in particular who get to document and see the kind of the good and the bad, the ugly when the M&A doesn't work, having a strategy is critical. And
there are a lot of ones that go south, right? Best of
exactly.
intentions, and then they just can't execute. The cultures clash. I mean, the amount of ways it can go wrong are endless, but when it goes right. So what's your advice for leaders who are like, you know what? Maybe I'm already executive in a company and we don't do a lot of M&A. We're thinking about it. Or maybe they're a rising leader and they're like, you know what? That sounds like a interesting world to get into. First of all, I guess, how do you know if you're a leader who has a taste to jump into that part of the business?
First, you gotta be willing to stomach the risk associated with it, right? Because generally it involves some form of borrowing debt. Now, again, as we've grown in size and scale, that's less relevant in terms of debt being a big component of this. But when you're starting to do, if you're a $50 million company and you're going to do your first acquisition, you're going to borrow a bunch of money from a bank and you're going to put leverage into your business. So you have to be willing to understand the risks, but financial leverage works exactly that way. When it goes really good, it accelerates things. Obviously, when it goes bad, leverage works against you as well. So you have to stomach the risk. And the second piece of advice I would get is have great advisors. Do not cut corners on advisors in terms of like, oh, well, this guy's $350 and this one's $375. I'm going to go with the guy that's $350. Go with the right guy for the job. You're making substantial bets on your company. So you want to have great advisors if this isn't an area that you have expertise in. And then you want to partner with people who have expertise to help guide you in the strategy. But if you're a deal person by your nature, which a lot of CFOs and CEOs are, a lot of your natural skills will be very applicable. But you have to have people around you because knowledge is power in this industry. And the more you know, and the more times you've done it, the more you can refine your strategy. But my number one advice will continue to be have a very defined strategy as to why you are doing the M&A. Do not do M&A for the sake of M&A or for the sake of, I want to see my top line grow, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to acquire something. Bad reason.
Okay. All right. Some really good advice there. So from a personal level, stomach the risk. Okay.
Right.
And I think that's and understand hedging and whatnot. But I mean, that is a big thing for leaders to think about. And if you're a CFO, I mean, risk is not something that I would think most CFOs are sort of naturally prone to take on because they're always concerned about the bottom line. So this next piece of that, what you said is, hey, build a great team, have a great team of advisors. Don't skimp on that part of it. And I think sometimes leaders are prone to go it alone. So much easier initially if you just go it alone. There are less approvals, there are less advice people to check in with. And you're saying build out your team. And man, and it's been successful. So for you all at West Shore Home, I mean, how many, if you can disclose it, how many M&A deals have y'all been through since you've been there, so people kind of understand the scope?
We've done 10,
Excellent.
9 specific to our industry. And one, we purchased a technology business out in Minnesota called the Design Center. So that was very interesting because obviously that was completely different than buying something in your industry. We bought something that was a skill set that we wanted to add to our business.
Okay.
So those were 2 completely different styles of M&A. So yeah, pretty, good number of deals. And, now with the markets changing, we can certainly talk about that for a minute if you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go there because your industry. So
Yep.
in the introduction, people got a flavor for what you're in, right? Housing remodeling, bringing in technology, and striving to be the best, right? I believe the motto of the company is to be the highest rated brand in the country when it comes to home remodeling.
America's most admired home remodeling.
Most admired, right? And
That's
so
right.
with this many, I mean, good grief, over 20,000 5-star reviews. I think you're well on your way to that. But the industry right now, and so people could be listening to this down the road, but right now the industry's cooling off because the Fed's increasing their interest rates and they're working like crazy. They're really trying to slow the train down, for better or for worse. That's what's happening. And it's affecting the home industry. But you guys, I mean, I go to your website, you guys are advertising, you're clearly hiring.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some of the videos of your employees. They seem like they couldn't be happier. Of course, you're probably not going to put disgruntled employees on your video, but the ones that are on there are completely fired up, which I just love to see. How are you as an executive thinking about this? Because you seem to be hiring in an industry that's starting to slow down. So what's your perspective there?
Yeah, no, I mean, so a couple things, right? So part of what's good about our business model, which is very unique, and we could have a whole podcast on what's going on here, because obviously to the exterior world, it's, we're installing products in people's homes and making them better. And our motto is to do it in one day to make it as stressless as possible, because no one likes remodeling their house. But
right. Especially when you have to move out of your house, or they say, hey, it's just going to take a few days. We're just going to remodel your bathroom.
Right.
And then 3 months later, you're like, y'all, please, can I please get back in my house? Yeah.
That is the whole underlying thesis to the company, was to figure out how to make the home improvement experience better. It's a $500 billion market of remodeling your house.
500 billion?
$500 billion a year Americans spend remodeling their homes. That's not new construction. That's not any of that. That is remodeling. That is going in my house and, painting my walls, changing my windows, changing my bathrooms, putting in a new front door. All those types of projects amount to over $500 billion.
We love new stuff.
Yeah. That's right. Right. So, but I mean, back to your question, kind of on the, on the M&A front, look, yes, the industry is slowing down in terms of what's going on with the Fed, interest rates, consumer sentiment, you name it. Right. Our business was built a little differently. So, when our business, we're not chained solely to the macroeconomic aspects of housing. It was built to be a business that performs in multiple cycles of the economy, and it has demand drivers that allow it to kind of live in all different cycles.
Tell me more about that. Different economic cycles. So red hot acceleration market like we had. Now we're cooling off. We could be bumping along for a while. What about your businesses? How are you leading in a way that makes it less prone to disruption?
Yeah, a couple facets. First, technology, meaning whether it's through marketing technology, whether it's through the technology that runs the business, whether it's the value proposition that we bring to customers. Our CEO quotes this line frequently, in that just the categories we serve in America. I quoted the TAM, right? The total addressable market of being over $500 billion. Just the product categories that West Shore serves today, it's a $30 billion industry. All we have to do is be a little bit better than the other people chasing that same $30 billion. Yep. And if you have great technology, a great value proposition, and you have great people, and you have great processes and SOPs, then you can buck the trends in terms of the broader economy, or if you're a smaller business, or you're dealing with something that you're going to very much feel those tailwinds. It doesn't mean we're immune to everything that's going on, but it allows us to still be able to aggressively grow our business, hire people, consider M&A investment, when maybe others are batting down the hatches and doing the opposite. And I just said this in a strategy meeting yesterday, that the best companies often grow and do the most strategic M&As during challenging times.
Makes sense, but they're not prepared for that.
If you haven't been putting deposits in your bank, as we like to say, well, you might not be ready for that.
Yeah. And so one of the so this is a little bit of a higher level leadership lesson for people to think about. But your preparation for various economic conditions started a while ago, probably.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, oh man, next year we could have a down cycle, so we should really think about that. This is something that you've been preparing for a while, it sounds like, and you're probably dusting off your banking experience to know, well, this is going to happen at some point, and this is what we need to be prepared to do. And so leaders thinking ahead beyond just the 1 year cycle, so you don't have to make these knee-jerk reactions on, because like what I see is, okay, next year could be a recession, so we're getting to start cutting things right now. We're just going to cut. And it's such a near term, and a lot of it may be too, like if you're a public company, you got to take maybe swifter action on this, but it's something to think about. And it sounds like to me, you're taking a very long view. So when these different cycles come up, which they do periodically, you're going to be in best position to take advantage of it.
That's right, because the overall industry will go down a little bit, and those that were getting their gains in top line solely from the tailwinds of industry will give those gains back when the industry pivots the other way, versus if you've been building a business model that is set up to perform in multiple cycles, that gives you a much better footing to be aggressive in a scenario like this, which I think will be our posture. I am a risk manager, so we will look at common sense measures during a softer economy. But the last thing we're going to do is turtle up and, kind of hold on tight and hope that, things go our way, right? We're going to take default aggressive action, and we're going to keep implementing our plan regardless of the broader economic conditions, because as you said, you've got to be a through the cycle performer. You can't make decisions that are going to help you 6 months from now, but they're going to hamstring you 2 years from now. That's short-sighted.
A lot of good nuggets out of this interview, but I think that's one that's going to really resonate. It's certainly with me, right? Acknowledge your cycles that your business is going to face, accept them. Yeah. And then once you do that, you can back into how you're going to prepare, how you're going to address them and not be caught off guard. Now, I cannot let you off this podcast without you telling me about you can't deposit excuses, that sign behind your head. And by the way, excuses looks a lot like the font on a dollar bill.
That is correct.
And even the gray.
That's right.
So what is going on with that?
So truth be told, it's actually funny. We all have Facebook and social media accounts. Like 10 years ago, I was served an ad for this picture behind me, and I screenshotted it and I shared it on my Facebook with all my friends. And, I thought it was really funny. And about, actually, it was like right around COVID. We mentioned that in kind of the intro part, that I started here in the midst of COVID, which was an extremely interesting time to take on my first ever job as a chief financial officer. But it was actually a great thing. And if you want to talk about for a second, we can come back to that. But
yeah, definitely.
The sign behind me was actually a gift from one of our employees during that time period. And it was sitting out in the entryway for a little while. And I said to our CEO, I said, I want to put that in my office, because I think that pretty much sums up that, you cannot deposit excuses in the bank. It doesn't turn into cash flow. And, when you're a high growth company, I mean, we're blessed to have good cash flow, but cash flow is the lifeblood of any business. And so, it's a little bit of a tongue in cheek around it, but, at the end of the day, it is true. You can't take your excuses to the bank and get a loan. So I think it's a pretty, maybe the leadership development guys probably have different posters than mine, but, it's my job to keep the company financially stable, and you can't deposit excuses.
I'm about to say, you're never going to have a CEO walk in and not appreciate that.
You would
always say, I'm glad somebody around here is thinking about the bottom line, because no matter if you're doing leadership training, no matter if you're talking about podcasting, I mean, we help companies with podcasting, but we take a very bottom line approach. It's not just a hobby podcast, because we recognize that you can't deposit excuses. So before we get off this, really quickly, just share with us your fantastic COVID story about starting and then COVID-19 hits.
That's right. I mean, I remember, I transitioned from the banking industry. So I was working on deals. And I was actually working on some deals that would have some very obvious exposure, and that they were in industries that would be obviously affected if there was a pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't understand how it was going to affect literally everyone, but you could certainly see where certain events and things like that would start to be shut down for at least a temporary period of time. So I had been asking some questions of some folks in the industries like that, saying, well, what are y'all thinking about this? And for the most part, everyone was kind of ignoring it, right? And that was
it'll go away.
Yeah,
we'll
it's
go
not
home for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
it disappears. The world goes on. Yeah.
Exactly. So I did move forward with onboarding here at West Shore, and it was starting to intensify a little bit. And then it was like literally as like I was actually transitioning because of my former employer, Huntington, has a great relationship with West Shore. And so I was able to kind of start on the transition and do both jobs for a little while. And by the first official day of the job, the pandemic was here. I mean, things were going down quickly. Yep. And within probably a week and a half, things were shutting down. And at that point, we had maybe 12 or 13 offices. We have 35 locations across the country today, and we're opening a 36th here shortly. And so we had maybe 12 or 13 offices. 25% of our revenue at that time was probably coming out of Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania was one of the most strict states. They considered construction non-essential. And so we went to a zero revenue model in literally, overnight in the state of Pennsylvania. But we also had suppliers shutting down. So could we even get the product? And so, it went from being a business that was super high performing with no discussions around financials, cash flow modeling, anything like that, to now that being the core focus of, me and the CEO war planning in the room of what it would look like if we literally went to a zero revenue model for 60, 90 days, 120 days, what type of capital did we have to sustain that? How would we maintain our workforce? I don't have to go on. Everyone knows what these issues were about. But the cool story in all this is maybe a week into this, our CEO looked over at me and you kind of hit on this earlier, right? You're a banker. You're sort of a risk adverse guy. This is your first job leaving a stable industry. And man, what a time to jump in and be my partner here in this journey as my CFO. And he, in so many words, said to me, look, you can probably reverse this decision if you want, and you can go back to the stable banking industry where, it's going to be a tumultuous ride for everyone, but, you work for these mega banks, you'll have a job there. We don't know what's going to happen in a, at that time we were kind of a medium-sized business. And it was a great defining moment in my relationship with him, because I looked at him and I said, look, when you make a decision, you're all in. If you can't pay me and I got to go 3 months without a paycheck or 6 months without a paycheck, that's fine. Look, like, I made a decision to join this team and I'm in. I'm all in. I'm not looking back. Once you make a decision, you have to be definitive. And obviously that was a major turning point in our relationship.
That's the guy you want on your team right there.
That's right. That's right. And we were very blessed that after 60 days, we realized pretty quickly that this was gonna create a boom in home improvement. And then again, the CEO, the CFO, and some other leaders here, we worked hard on how to capitalize on that. Hiring was a great example. So, we turned on the hiring while other people were still sitting at home. We were blasting the world with openings because we knew this would be an opportunity to grab people that weren't available in the past 2 or 3 years. And we probably hired, as a percentage of people, we've certainly hired more people now given our scale, but as a percentage of our overall workforce, we probably hired more people in that 90, 120, 270 days of COVID than we had ever in the history of the company. And that was obviously a major defining moment for us to get some more size and scale in the business, as well as bring on a whole bunch of talent. And since we are in an industry that everything we do requires people, we have to send, there isn't technology that can, a robot that can come out and install your bathroom. So we need people. And we took it as an opportunity to go out and acquire as many people as we could. And obviously it paid huge dividends.
Well, you all heard it here. Phillip Brenckle, West Shore Home. Man, if you haven't seen them on TV or in your neighborhood, get ready, because I think they're coming your way. You're going to start noticing. Phillip, thanks for coming on to lead the team.
Ben, really enjoyed it. Thanks for your time, and wish you all the leaders out there the best of luck, and stay aggressive.
All right, let's go.